Lieutenant Maya Chen stepped off the transport ship and felt the artificial gravity settle around her. The air on Kara 7 smelled sterile, processed through filters that stripped away anything interesting. She adjusted the strap of her equipment bag and looked up at the massive structure before her. The Galactic Coalition training facility rose like a mountain of metal and glass, catching the light of 3 distant suns. She was the first human to teach here. That thought sat heavy in her stomach. The facility's entrance scanned her credentials and doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the corridor stretched wide enough to accommodate species twice her size. Groups of alien cadets moved past in organized formations. She recognized a few species from her briefings: the towering Kreshna with their crystalline skin, the floating Melody who communicated through color changes, and there, a group of Vrakesh. The Vrakesh looked like wolves who had learned to walk upright. Their fur ranged from silver to black, and their eyes held an intelligence that was both familiar and utterly alien. These were cubs, the briefing had called them. Adolescents in human terms. They moved in tight formation, their posture rigid and controlled. Not one of them spoke or looked at another. They simply marched forward with mechanical precision. Maya's escort appeared, a slim Kreshna administrator whose name translated to something like Swift River. The administrator's translator device rendered her words in flat, emotionless tones. "Lieutenant Chen, you are expected. Pack Leader Torvin is waiting." They walked through corridors that seemed designed to intimidate. Everything was sharp angles and cold surfaces. Maya noticed training rooms through observation windows. Cubs of various species engaged in combat drills, endurance tests, survival scenarios. All of it looked harsh, brutal even. "The Vrakesh Pack is our most prestigious unit," Swift River explained. "Their species has served the Coalition for 2 centuries. They are proud warriors with deep traditions." Maya nodded. She had studied those traditions. The Vrakesh raised their young communally, in packs of 20 to 30 cubs. Emotion was considered weakness. Physical affection was forbidden after infancy. Cubs learned to suppress fear, pain, and any need for comfort. Those who could not adapt were removed from warrior training and given lesser roles in Vrakesh society. It sounded like a good way to traumatize children, but Maya kept that thought to herself. Pack Leader Torvin waited in a large training hall. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his dark fur marked with scars that spoke of long service. His eyes fixed on Maya with clear disdain. He did not offer any greeting gesture. "So, the human." His voice came out as a low growl. The translator made it sound contemptuous. "The Coalition believes your species has something to teach us." "I disagree." Maya met his gaze. "I'm here to share tactical knowledge. Humans have experience with guerrilla warfare, adaptation to hostile environments, and creative problem-solving under pressure. Your species is barely civilized. You come from a death world where everything tries to kill you. You learn to be violent and clever because you had no other choice." Torvin's ears flattened against his skull. "The Vrakesh have honor, discipline, structure. We do not need human barbarism." "Understood," Maya said quietly. "I'll observe today. Learn your methods. Then we can discuss integration." Torvin's lip curled, showing teeth. "You may observe, but you will not interfere. Our cubs are not your concern." The training session began with physical conditioning. 30 Vrakesh cubs entered the hall in perfect formation. They ranged in age from what Maya guessed was 12 to 16 in human years. Each wore a simple training harness marked with their pack designation. They moved to their positions without a word, without a glance at each other or the instructors. "Begin." Torvin's command cracked like a whip. The cubs exploded into motion. They scaled climbing walls with claws extended, leapt across gaps that made Maya's heart jump, and engaged in combat drills that would have hospitalized human teenagers. And through it all, they remained silent. No encouragement between packmates. No celebration of success. Not even a grunt of effort. Maya watched one cub in particular. Smaller than the others, with reddish-brown fur and a noticeable limp. The cub struggled with the climbing wall, claws scraping for purchase. Another instructor, a younger Vrakesh named Kelth, stalked toward the struggling cub. "Rika! Weakness!" Kelth snarled. "Again!" The cub, Rika, dropped back to the starting position. Maya could see the tremble in the young Vrakesh's legs. The injury was clearly bothering her. Him? Maya wasn't sure of the cub's gender, but it was obvious the cub was in pain. Rika attempted the climb again, made it halfway, slipped, fell hard to the mat below. The other cubs didn't react, didn't even look. They continued their own exercises as if nothing had happened. Kelth loomed over Rika. Pathetic. You shame the pack. Stand and try again. Maya's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed at her to intervene, to check if the cub was injured, to offer help. She took a step forward before she could stop herself. Torvin's massive hand caught her shoulder. No, that cub is injured, Maya said quietly. The leg. See the way? I see a cub who must overcome weakness. This is our way. Torvin's grip tightened, not quite painful, but absolutely firm. You will not interfere. You do not understand what we do here. Maya watched Rika struggle to stand. The cub's left leg buckled, but with visible effort, Rika forced herself upright. No whimper, no plea for help. Just silent determination mixed with what looked like shame. Your way breaks them, Maya said, keeping her voice level. Our way forges them into warriors. The weak are culled. The strong survive and bring honor to the pack. Torvin released her shoulder. This is why humans will never truly understand us. You coddle your young. You encourage emotional dependence. It makes you soft. It makes us resilient, Maya countered. Human children who receive support and comfort develop stronger emotional regulation. They recover from trauma faster. They form better teamwork skills. Pretty words from a species barely a century into space travel. Torvin turned away. Continue observing if you wish. But remember, these are not human children. They are Vrkesh cubs, and they will be trained according to our traditions. Maya stayed for the rest of the session. She watched the cubs push themselves past any reasonable limit. She watched instructors respond to mistakes with harsh words and, occasionally, physical corrections. She watched cubs suppress pain, fear, and exhaustion behind masks of rigid control. And she watched Rika. The injured cub completed every exercise through sheer willpower. But by the end, she could barely walk. When dismissed, the cubs filed out in formation. Rika limped, struggling to keep pace. The cub beside her, a larger male with black fur, shifted slightly closer as if considering offering support. But a sharp look from Kelth made him snap back to position. That night in her assigned quarters, Maya reviewed everything she had learned about Vrkesh psychology. The official coalition materials praised their discipline and warrior culture. But when she dug deeper into the anthropological studies, she found something interesting. Ancient Vrkesh society, before they reached the stars, had included specialist nurturers, pack members whose role was to tend to cubs' emotional needs. That role had been systematically eliminated over centuries as warrior culture became dominant. The cubs weren't suppressing their needs because they didn't have them. They were suppressing needs that were natural and healthy, forcing themselves into a mold that ignored basic psychology. Maya sat back and stared at her notes. She had been brought here to teach tactics and survival skills. But maybe, just maybe, humans had something more important to offer. Maybe they could teach the Vrkesh what they had forgotten about themselves. She thought of Rika's trembling legs and silent pain. Tomorrow she would find a way to help, even if it meant challenging centuries of tradition. Even if it meant making enemies, that was the human way. 2 weeks passed like walking through broken glass. Maya taught her assigned classes on tactical improvisation and hostile environment survival. The Vrkesh cubs listened with blank faces and followed instructions with mechanical precision. They learned quickly. Their intelligence was obvious, but something essential was missing. There was no curiosity, no excitement, no joy in mastering new skills. Just grim determination to avoid failure. Maya started keeping notes on individual cubs. Rika, the injured one from that first day, still limped though she tried to hide it. Jeth, the smallest cub in the pack, constantly struggled with the physical requirements. He was clever, though. Maya noticed he found efficient solutions that other cubs missed, using technique where others used brute strength. Then there was Sorna, a female with silver fur who performed every task aggressively, almost violently, as if trying to prove something. The other instructors pretended Maya did not exist. Torvin spoke to her only when necessary, his words clipped and cold. The cubs never approached her, never asked questions outside of class. They treated her like a piece of furniture that occasionally gave useful instructions. But Maya watched. She saw things the Vrkesh instructors missed or chose to ignore. She saw Jeth flinch when Kelth walked past even when the instructor had not said anything. She saw cubs who made small mistakes spend their free time alone, isolated from the pack, radiating shame. She saw the way they never touched each other, never offered comfort or encouragement, as if any connection would be punished. It reminded her of what she had read about human children raised in severely neglectful institutions. The same flat effect, the same desperate attempt to suppress basic needs, the same brittleness that came from having no emotional support. On the 15th day, everything changed. The training schedule included a combat simulation in the facility's main arena. The Cubs would face a series of challenges designed to test tactical thinking, teamwork, and adaptability. Maya stood in the observation deck with other instructors, watching through reinforced glass as the Cubs took their positions. The simulation began. Holographic enemies appeared, sophisticated enough to move and fight realistically. The Cubs engaged with practiced efficiency, working in coordinated groups to neutralize threats. Maya saw her teaching taking effect. They used cover better now, thought about angles of attack, adapted their approach when initial tactics failed. Torvin stood beside her, arms crossed. "Your methods have some merit," he admitted grudgingly. "They are more flexible than before." Maya nodded, not taking her eyes off the exercise. Something felt wrong. The simulation was running too hot, the holographic enemies appearing too frequently. She glanced at the control station where a Krishna technician monitored the program. "Is the difficulty setting correct?" she asked. The technician's crystalline features flickered with confusion. The parameters are exceeding programmed limits. I am attempting to—" The explosion cut off the rest of the sentence. One of the arena's defensive drones malfunctioned, its containment field rupturing in a burst of energy that sent shrapnel flying. Real shrapnel, not holographic. The simulation immediately froze, but the damage was done. Cubs scattered, their training suddenly inadequate for genuine danger. Two more drones sparked and began moving erratically, their safety protocols obviously compromised. Maya did not think. "She ran! Chen!" Torvin's roar followed her, but she was already through the observation deck door, sprinting down the stairs to the arena floor. Behind her, she heard other instructors shouting, alarms beginning to wail, but all of that seemed distant and unimportant. The arena floor was chaos. Most of the Cubs had retreated to defensive positions, their training kicking in despite their fear. But 3 Cubs had been cut off when the explosion happened: Rika, Jeth, and another Cub named Veth. They were pinned behind inadequate cover while 2 malfunctioning drones advanced on their position, weapons ports glowing with dangerous energy. Maya cleared the arena entrance and assessed the situation in a heartbeat. The drones were operating on corrupted code, treating the Cubs as hostile targets. Security teams would arrive in minutes, maybe less, but these Cubs did not have minutes. The drones were charging weapons. She grabbed a piece of debris, a metal support beam that had been part of the simulation props, and charged directly at the nearest drone. It turned toward her, sensors tracking the movement. She slid under its weapons fire, feeling the heat of the energy blast pass over her head, and swung the beam at its sensor cluster with all her strength. The impact jarred her arms, but the drone staggered, its targeting disrupted. Maya did not stop. She had seconds before it recalibrated. She jammed the beam into its maneuvering thruster and threw her full weight against it, forcing the drone off balance. It toppled, still functional but unable to aim properly. The second drone had a clear shot at her. Maya knew it, could see the weapons port brightening. She was going to take the hit, but maybe that would give security enough time to reach the Cubs. The shot never came. The drone suddenly jerked sideways as Torvin slammed into it from the side, his massive strength and momentum sending it crashing into the arena wall. 2 more Vrakesh instructors followed, along with the arriving security team. Within seconds, both drones were disabled. Maya's legs gave out. She dropped to her knees, adrenaline draining away and leaving her shaking. Her shoulder hurt where she had landed wrong during the slide. Her hands were scraped raw from the metal beam. But the Cubs were safe. Rika, Jeth, Veth, come here now. Torvin barked, already moving toward the 3 Cubs, but the Cubs were not looking at Torvin. They were looking at Maya. Rika moved first. The limping Cub broke from cover and ran, ignoring the injured leg, straight to Maya. Before Maya could react, Rika pressed against her, a high-pitched whine escaping from the Cub's throat. Not a sound Maya had ever heard of Vrakesh make. It sounded like grief and relief and terror all mixed together. Then Jeth was there, the small Cub pushing close to Maya's other side, and Veth, All three cubs pressed against her, trembling, making those distressed sounds. Maya's arms came up automatically. She had done crisis counseling training, had worked with traumatized children during her years in the service. Her hands moved on instinct, stroking fur, offering gentle pressure and warmth. She spoke softly, not really words, just soothing sounds. "It's okay. You're safe. It's over now. You're safe." The cubs, trembling, began to ease. Their whining quieted. They did not pull away, instead burrowing closer to the human who had put herself between them and danger. "What is this?" Kelth's voice held shock and something like horror. "Cubs, return to position immediately." The cubs did not move. They stayed pressed against Maya. Their instinctive need for comfort overwhelming cycles of conditioning. Medical teams arrived, scanners checking everyone for injuries. The technicians swarmed the malfunctioning drones. Administrators appeared, already talking about investigations and safety reviews. But Maya barely noticed any of it. She kept her arms around the three cubs, keeping herself between them and the chaos of the arena. Torvin approached slowly. His expression was unreadable, but his ears were flat against his skull. "Chen, release the cubs." "They're scared," Maya said quietly. "Give them a minute. They are Vrakesh warriors in training. They do not need—" Torvin stopped, his words failing as he looked at the cubs. Really looked at them. At how they clung to this alien human. At how their trembling had stopped. At how, despite their training, despite everything they had been taught, they had run to Maya for comfort and found it. "This is not acceptable," Kelth said, his voice sharp. "This behavior is shameful. These cubs must be disciplined." "Enough." Torvin's word cracked like thunder. He looked at the other instructors, then at the cubs, then at Maya. "Everyone is dismissed. Medical teams, check all cubs and instructors for injury. The rest of you, return to quarters. We will address this later." Slowly, carefully, Maya helped the three cubs stand. They did not want to leave her side, but she gently encouraged them. "Go with your pack. I'll see you tomorrow. I promise, you're safe." Rika looked up at her with amber eyes that held too much pain for someone so young. Then slowly the cub limped back toward the other cubs. Jeth and Veth followed. The rest of the pack surrounded them, but Maya noticed something interesting. The other cubs touched Rika, Yeth, and Veth. Just brief touches, not quite forbidden, not quite allowed. As if they understood something important had happened and they needed to acknowledge it. By the time Maya returned to her quarters, footage of the incident was already spreading through the coalition networks. Human instructor risks life for alien cubs. Deathworlder shields Vrakesh young. Unprecedented display of cross-species protection. Maya ignored all of it. She sat on her bunk and stared at her scraped hands. Three cubs had run to her. Not to their own instructors. Not to their own species, to her. Because she had shown them something they desperately needed and had been denied. Someone was going to make her pay for that. But looking at those scraped hands, Maya found she did not care. The formal inquiry began 3 days after the incident. Maya sat in a sterile conference room facing a panel of coalition officials and Vrakesh elders. The charges were serious: cultural interference, violation of species-specific training protocols, undermining Vrakesh authority, creating dependency behaviors in cubs. The list went on. Through it all, Maya answered questions calmly and honestly. Yes, she had acted on instinct. Yes, she understood her behavior contradicted Vrakesh training philosophy. No, she did not regret it. "You taught these cubs to be weak," one elder said, his scarred muzzle twisted with disgust. "You encouraged shameful behavior. Now they will always seek comfort instead of showing strength." "I taught them they would not die alone and afraid," Maya replied. "There's a difference between weakness and trauma response. What I saw was 3 cubs in acute distress. Ignoring that doesn't make them strong. It makes them damaged." Torvin sat on the panel, silent through most of the proceedings. When he finally spoke, his words were measured. "Lieutenant Chen violated protocol. However, her tactical knowledge has proven valuable. I recommend formal censure but continued assignment." The recommendation surprised Maya. She had expected him to push for her removal. The panel adjourned without reaching a conclusion. Maya returned to her quarters, uncertain whether she would be teaching the next day or packing her things. The next morning she reported to the training facility as usual. No one told her not to. The cubs were scheduled for morning physical conditioning. Maya approached the hall with her stomach tight with anxiety. Would they even let her in? The doors opened. She stepped inside. and chaos erupted. Rika broke formation first. The cub saw Maya and simply ran, all discipline forgotten. Then Jeth. Then Sorna. Within heartbeats, half the cubs in the training pack abandoned their positions and rushed toward the human. They crowded around her, pressing close, making soft sounds that were nothing like the disciplined silence they were supposed to maintain. "Stop. Return to formation," Kelth shouted, but the cubs ignored him. They were focused entirely on Maya, seeking her presence, her attention, her touch. Maya stood frozen in shock. This was worse than the arena. This was not cubs in traumatized shock seeking any comfort available. This was deliberate choice, preference, connection. The other instructors looked horrified. The remaining cubs stood in broken formation, watching their packmates with obvious confusion and what might have been longing. They wanted to join the group around Maya, but discipline held them in place. Barely. "Get them away from her," one instructor snarled. Torvin strode forward, his massive presence commanding. "Cubs, you shame yourselves and your pack. Return to—" "Stop." The word came from the doorway. Everyone turned. An elderly Vrakesh stood there, leaning on a carved walking staff. Her fur had gone silver-white with age, and her eyes were clouded, but she radiated an authority that made even Torvin straighten. Maya recognized her from the briefing materials. Matriarch Keshra, one of the oldest and most respected elders of the Vrakesh people. "Matriarch," Torvin said, bowing his head. "These cubs have forgotten themselves." I saw the footage of the arena incident," Keshra interrupted. Her voice was rough with age, but clear. "I saw what happened. Now I want to see this." She gestured at Maya, and the cubs crowded around her. "Continue as you were." Maya looked down at the cubs pressed against her. Rika looked up at her with pleading eyes. These cubs wanted something from her that their own species would not provide. The kind thing would be to give it, but the political thing would be to push them away, restore order, show deference to Vrakesh authority. Maya chose kindness. She knelt down, bringing herself to the cubs' level. "Hey, it's okay. I know things were scary, but you're all safe now. You're all so brave." She touched each one gently, affirming their presence. The cubs leaned into her touch like flowers toward sunlight. Several instructors made sounds of disgust, but Keshra simply watched, her clouded eyes seeing more than Maya expected. "You," Keshra said, pointing her staff at Maya. "Show me what you do." "Explain it," Maya swallowed. "I'm not doing anything complicated. I'm responding to their emotional needs. These cubs experience trauma. Their nervous systems are still in heightened alert. They need reassurance that they're safe, that the danger has passed. Physical touch from a trusted figure helps regulate stress hormones. Verbal affirmation helps rebuild a sense of security. We do not coddle our cubs," Kelth protested. "This makes them weak, dependent, does it?" Keshra moved closer, her staff tapping against the floor. "When did our cubs last show such clear connection to an instructor? When did they last seek out any of us?" Silence. The question hung heavy. Keshra turned to Maya. "Tell me, human, what do you know of our history?" "I've read the cultural briefings," Maya said carefully. "I know the Vrakesh have a proud warrior tradition spanning centuries. Pack structure, hierarchy, discipline. Dig deeper. What came before the warrior culture?" Maya thought back to her research. There were specialists, nurturers, pack members whose role was specifically to tend to cubs' emotional needs. "Yes." Keshra's staff tapped again. "My grandmother's grandmother was a nurturer, the last one of our line. When I was a very small cub, she told me stories about how she cared for her pack's young, how she taught them to be strong by first teaching them they were loved, how she helped them process fear and pain so they could face the world with confidence instead of brittleness." The other Vrakesh instructors shifted uncomfortably. This was clearly not a story they wanted told. "But nurturers were inefficient," Kelth said. "They made cubs soft. We eliminated the role to strengthen our people, did we?" Keshra turned her clouded eyes on him. "Look at these cubs. Are they weak? Or are they showing us what we have forgotten? That strength and emotional need are not opposites. That a cub who knows safety can also know bravery?" She moved to stand beside Maya, looking down at the cubs still clustered close. "The humans did not invent what they are doing. They simply retained what we discarded. They understand what we chose to forget." "You cannot mean to allow this to continue," Torvin said slowly. Our traditions created brittle cubs who break under pressure we pretend not to see. Keshra interrupted. I have reviewed the Academy records for the past 10 cycles. Do you know how many cubs fail out? How many develop aggression disorders? How many never form proper pack bonds as adults? She let the question sit. The numbers would shame us if we allowed ourselves to see them. She turned to Maya. You will continue teaching, but now you will also implement something new. You will create space for these cubs to process their emotions. You will respond to their needs as you see fit, and we will observe what happens. Matriarch, with respect, Kelth began. My word is final. Keshra's voice cracked like a whip. This human has shown us a mirror. We do not have to like what we see, but we cannot unsee it. The question now is whether we have the courage to change. She looked at Maya with those clouded eyes. I am trusting you with our children. Not because I fully understand your ways, but because they ran to you when they were afraid and you did not fail them. That is worth more than any tradition. With that, she turned and walked out, leaving stunned silence behind. Slowly, the instructors dispersed, some angry, some thoughtful, all clearly unsettled. Torvin remained, staring at Maya and the cubs. You have created a problem, he said finally. Or a solution, Maya replied. If you fail, if these cubs prove weak in real combat, it will fall on both of us. Then we better make sure they don't fail. Torvin's ears flicked. It might have been annoyance. It might have been something else. What do you need? Maya looked down at Rika, still pressed against her side. At Jeth, who had finally stopped trembling. At all the cubs who had chosen her over their own traditions. Time, space, permission to try something different. You have it. Torvin paused. Teach them your human way, but do not forget they are still Rakesh. They still need to be strong. They will be, Maya promised, but they'll be strong in a way that lasts. Not brittle, not broken, actually strong. She looked at the cubs around her and saw potential. Saw young people who could be amazing if someone just gave them permission to be whole. Okay, she said softly. Let's try something new. Let's build a pack that works. The cubs looked up at her with hope in their eyes, and for the first time since arriving at this facility, Maya thought maybe, just maybe, she could make a real difference here. Maya called them pack bonding sessions, though the name made some of the traditional instructors wince. She scheduled them 3 times a week, after physical training when the cubs were tired and their emotional defenses were lowest. The sessions were technically optional. Every single cub attended. The first session was awkward. Maya sat in a smaller training room with 30 Vrakesh cubs staring at her. They had no idea what to do. Neither did she, really. Human group therapy techniques might not translate well to aliens who had spent their lives suppressing every emotion. Okay, she started. This is a safe space. That means you can talk about things that bother you. About things that are hard. About being scared or frustrated or angry. No one will punish you for having feelings here. The cubs looked at each other uncertainly. Finally, Sorna, the aggressive silver-furred cub, spoke. Feelings are weakness. Instructors have always taught this. Feelings are information, Maya corrected gently. Fear tells you something might be dangerous. Frustration tells you a method is not working. Anger tells you a boundary has been crossed. Learning to recognize and manage those feelings makes you smarter, not weaker. But when we show fear, we are punished, Jeth said quietly. The small cub looked at the floor. We learn to hide it. Hiding it does not make it go away, Maya said. It just means you carry it alone. And carrying everything alone makes you brittle. You break easier, but if you can share it, process it together, you become stronger as a pack. She saw confusion on their faces. This concept was so foreign to everything they had been taught. Let me try something different, Maya said. Rika, can you come here? The limping cub approached hesitantly. Maya gestured for her to sit. Tell me about your leg. The one you hurt? Rika's ears flattened. I twisted it during climbing exercises. It is healing, but it still hurts, right? A pause, then a tiny nod. Have you told the medical staff it still hurts? No. Why not? Rika looked down. Because pain is temporary. Warriors endure. Warriors who ignore injuries make them worse, Maya said. Being hurt is not weakness. It's just being hurt. What matters is how you handle it. You can endure pain stupidly and make the injury permanent, or you can get proper treatment and heal correctly. She paused. Which one makes you a better warrior? Rika thought about that. The second one. Exactly. Acknowledging you are hurt so you can heal is not weakness. It is practical, smart. Maya looked at the other cubs. This applies to emotional injuries too. Ignoring them does not make you strong. It makes you damaged. Something shifted in the room. The cubs leaned forward slightly, listening with new attention. Over the following weeks, the sessions evolved. Cubs began talking about their fears, their frustrations, their struggles. Maya taught them techniques she had learned in human military training, breathing exercises for managing stress, methods for processing traumatic experiences, ways to support packmates without showing weakness to outsiders. And slowly, the cubs changed. Torvin noticed it first during tactical exercises. They adapt faster now, he told Maya one evening. When a plan fails, they do not freeze or blindly repeat the same approach. They communicate, adjust, try something new. Because they are not afraid to acknowledge failure, Maya explained. Failure is just information. You cannot learn from it if you cannot admit it happened. Torvin's ears twitched. Over the weeks, Maya had learned this meant he was thinking hard about something. My sister failed out of warrior training when we were cubs, he said suddenly. She could not suppress her fear responses adequately. She was assigned to maintenance roles, considered lesser. I have not spoken to her in cycles. Maya said nothing, letting him work through his thoughts. She was not weak, he continued. She was simply honest about what she felt. And we punished her for that honesty. It's not too late, Maya said quietly. You could contact her? Perhaps. He looked at Maya. You are changing our cubs in ways I did not think possible. But I worry. What happens when they face real danger? Will this emotional awareness help them? Or will it make them hesitate? Let's find out, Maya said. She designed a new training scenario. A night exercise in the facility's wilderness simulation area. The cubs would need to navigate difficult terrain, avoid detection, and complete an objective. But Maya added something new, unexpected psychological pressure, simulated civilians in danger, moral dilemmas, choices that had no clear right answer. Traditional Vrakesh training focused on following orders and completing missions. Maya wanted to see if her cubs could do more than that. She wanted to see if they could think, adapt, and handle emotional complexity. The exercise began at sunset. The cubs moved into the simulation area in standard formation. Maya and Torvin watched from the control room as the cubs split into smaller units, each taking a different approach to the objective. Everything went smoothly until the first complication. Rika's unit discovered a simulated civilian, actually a hologram with sophisticated AI, trapped under debris. The civilian was not part of the mission objectives. Standard protocol said ignore it and continue to the objective. Rika stopped. Maya could see the cub's indecision on the monitoring screen. Interesting, Torvin murmured. Protocol says she should continue to objective. But she is thinking about alternatives, Maya said. Watch. Rika made hand signals to her unit. They moved quickly, 2 cubs keeping watch while Rika and another cub lifted the debris and freed the civilian. It took 90 seconds. Then they continued to the objective, only slightly delayed. She broke protocol, Kelth said from behind them. She wasted time on non-mission activity. She showed initiative and moral judgment, Maya countered. And she did it efficiently. The mission is not compromised. Similar scenarios played out across the exercise area. Jeth's unit encountered a moral dilemma. Take the quick, dangerous route or the slower, safer one. Traditional training emphasized speed and bold action, but Jeth chose the safer route, preserving his unit's strength. They arrived a few minutes late, but at full capacity. Sorna's unit faced the hardest challenge. They found their path blocked by what appeared to be injured packmates, actually sophisticated holograms. The scenario was designed to create emotional distress. Sorna could push forward and complete the mission, leaving the injured behind, or she could help them and likely miss the objective window. Maya watched Sorna freeze, the conflict obvious in her body language. The aggressive cub who usually pushed through everything was actually thinking, feeling, choosing. Then Sorna did something unexpected. She signaled her unit to split. Half would continue to the objective, half would help the injured. It was a compromise that addressed both concerns. That is not standard doctrine, an instructor said disapprovingly. That is brilliant tactical adaptation, Maya replied. She assessed the situation and created a solution that addressed multiple priorities. That is exactly what you want in a field commander. Torvin said nothing, but his ears were forward with interest. The exercise continued through the night. Maya watched her cubs handle complication after complication. They were not perfect. They made mistakes, but when they did, they adjusted. They communicated. They supported each other, and most importantly, they did not break. As dawn approached, all units completed their objectives. Some were late. Some used unconventional methods, but they all succeeded and they all worked together. The debriefing session was tense. Traditional instructors pointed out every protocol violation, every moment of hesitation, but Torvin silenced them with a raised hand. The Cubs completed every objective, he said. They did so while handling complications that would have paralyzed previous training groups. They adapted, they thought. They chose. He looked at Maya. This is what you promised. Cubs who are strong in a way that lasts. They still need work, Maya said. But yes, this is what emotional awareness combined with discipline looks like. They can feel fear and still act. They can acknowledge doubt and still decide. They can care about their packmates and still complete the mission. One of the elder instructors stood. But will they be Vrakesh? Or have you turned them into something else? Rika stood up from the group of Cubs. We are Vrakesh, she said, her voice clear. We are warriors, but we are also whole. The human did not make us weak. She helped us find strength we did not know we had. Jeth stood, then Sorna. Then one by one, every Cub in the training pack stood. We are still a pack, Sorna said, but now we know what pack really means. Not just fighting together, supporting each other, being honest with each other. That is true pack bond. Torvin looked at the standing Cubs and something in his expression shifted. Pride, maybe, or recognition. Dismissed, he said roughly. All of you, get rest. As the Cubs filed out, Torvin turned to Maya. You have done something I did not think possible. You have changed them without breaking them. They changed themselves, Maya said. I just gave them permission. No. Torvin shook his head. You gave them more than permission. You gave them the tools, and you gave them something we forgot they needed. He paused as if the words were difficult. Thank you. Maya felt something warm in her chest. Acceptance, maybe. Or at least the beginning of it. They're good Cubs, Torvin. They're going to be amazing adults. If they survive the final test, he said quietly. Maya turned to look at him. Final test? In 2 months, your Cubs will face traditional Cubs in a war game. The Coalition demands proof that the Coalition Diplomatic Summit brought representatives from 30 species to Kara 7. They came to observe, to judge, to decide if the humans' methods had merit, or were simply another example of Deathworlder foolishness. Maya stood in the observation gallery overlooking the main arena and felt the weight of all those eyes. 2 months of intensive preparation had led to this moment. Maya's Cubs, she thought of them that way now, though she tried not to say it aloud, had trained harder than ever. But the training was different now. They pushed themselves not because they feared punishment, but because they wanted to prove something. They wanted to show that emotional awareness made them better warriors, not worse. The traditional pack arrived that morning. 30 Cubs from another facility trained in pure Vrakesh methods. No emotional processing, no pack bonding sessions. Just discipline, hierarchy, and the suppression of anything that might be considered weakness. They moved with mechanical precision, their faces blank, their posture rigid. Maya's Cubs looked different. They stood together, but there was something alive in their formation. They touched each other occasionally, brief contact that conveyed support and connection. They made eye contact. They communicated with subtle gestures that showed real understanding between packmates. Torvin stood beside Maya. Over the past 2 months, they had become something like friends, or at least allies. I have trained warriors for 15 cycles, he said quietly. I have never been nervous before. Today I am nervous. Me too, Maya admitted. If they fail, they won't fail. You sound certain. I am. Maya looked down at her Cubs, at Rika, standing tall despite her legs still sometimes bothering her. At Jeth, small but confident now in his own skills. At Sorna, her aggression channeled into protective determination. They're ready, Matriarch Keshra's voice echoed through the arena. The trial will test tactical ability, teamwork, adaptability, and performance under pressure. The scenario is a rescue mission in hostile territory. Civilians are trapped. Enemy forces are active. Both packs will enter from opposite sides. They will be evaluated independently and comparatively. The rules were explained. Simulated weapons that registered hits but caused no real harm. Holographic enemies with advanced AI. Actual civilian volunteers from various species acting as the rescued. The scenario would throw complications at both packs. Equipment failures, unexpected enemies, moral dilemmas, and time pressure. The traditional pack entered the arena first. Maya watched them move with practiced efficiency. They were good. Really good. Their formations were perfect. Their responses to the initial challenges were textbook. When they encountered enemies, they eliminated them with cold precision. When they found trapped civilians, they extracted them with maximum speed and minimum interaction. It was impressive. It was everything Vrakesh training was supposed to produce. Then Maya's cubs entered. The difference was subtle at first. They moved in looser formation, responding to terrain and threat assessment rather than maintaining rigid structure. When they encountered their first challenge, a collapsed building with civilians inside, they did not just follow protocol. They assessed, communicated, and adapted. Rika led her unit in first. Instead of just pulling civilians out, they checked for injuries, offered reassurance, coordinated the extraction based on individual needs. It took slightly longer than the traditional pack's approach, but the civilians emerged calm instead of traumatized. They are wasting time, one of the evaluating officials muttered. They are preventing secondary trauma, Maya countered. Those civilians will be able to function and move quickly afterward instead of being paralyzed by fear. As if to prove her point, the civilians her cubs had rescued began helping with other parts of the mission, providing information and assistance. The traditional pack's rescued civilians mostly huddled together in shock. The scenario intensified. Enemy forces increased. Equipment began failing. The traditional pack responded by becoming more aggressive, pushing harder, taking greater risks. Maya's cubs responded by becoming more adaptive, finding creative solutions, supporting each other through setbacks. Then came the moment Maya had been waiting for. The moment she had prepared her cubs for without telling them explicitly. Both packs converged on the same objective. The last group of trapped civilians, held in a fortified position with heavy enemy presence. A direct assault would be costly. A slow approach would risk the civilians' lives. And the two packs were approaching from opposite sides, each unaware of the other. The traditional pack arrived first. Their leader, a large male named Kreth, immediately began organizing an assault, aggressive, direct, by the book. Then Maya's cubs appeared. Rika saw the other pack and signaled her units to hold. The traditional pack noticed them, and weapons were raised on both sides. The tension in the observation gallery became thick enough to cut. This is where it falls apart, Kelth predicted. Two packs, one objective. They will fight for dominance. Torvin said nothing, but Maya could see his tension in the set of his shoulders. Rika stepped forward, alone, into the space between the two packs. She raised her hands, showing no weapons. We have the same objective, she called out. If we fight each other, the civilians die. If we work together, we save them all, Kreth snarled. Your pack uses human weakness training. You are not true, Vrakesh. Stand aside. We are Vrakesh, Rika said calmly, and we are strong enough to ask for help when it makes tactical sense. Are you? The challenge hung in the air. The traditional pack shifted, uncertain. Their training said work alone, maintain hierarchy, show no vulnerability. But their instincts, their deeper pack nature, recognized the logic in Rika's words. Kreth took a step forward, aggressive. Rika did not back down. You can fight us and maybe win, she said. But while we fight, the civilians die. Is your pride worth their lives? Maya held her breath. This was the real test. Not combat ability, not tactical skill. The ability to transcend ego and tradition for a greater purpose. Kreth looked at his pack, then at Rika, then at the fortified position holding the civilians. Maya could see the war happening behind his eyes. Training versus instinct, pride versus logic. What do you propose? He asked finally. Relief flooded through the observation gallery. Some officials looked disappointed, wanting to see conflict. But Keshra leaned forward with interest. Rika and Kreth coordinated quickly. The traditional pack would provide direct assault. They were good at that. Maya's cubs would provide support, use their adaptive training to handle complications and focus on civilian extraction. It was not perfect coordination. There were rough edges, miscommunications, moments of friction, but it worked. The combined assault succeeded brilliantly. Enemies were neutralized efficiently. Civilians were extracted safely. Both packs suffered simulated casualties, but far fewer than either would have sustained alone. And when it was over, when the scenario ended and the lights came up, something unprecedented happened. Jeth approached one of the traditional pack cubs who had been injured during the assault. The small cub offered his hand, helping the other stand. It was a simple gesture, but the traditional pack cub stared at that offered hand like it was something alien and wonderful. Then he took it. More cubs from both packs began interacting. Not challenging or posturing, but actually communicating, sharing their experiences from the trial, acknowledging each other's skills, forming connections. In the observation gallery, the officials erupted into discussion. Some argued that cooperation was not the point, that warriors should be able to work alone. Others pointed out that warfare always involved coordination, and the ability to form alliances even with rivals was a critical skill. Matriarch Keshra stood, silencing the debate with her presence. "I have lived long enough to watch our people grow rigid," she said. "We prided ourselves on strength, on discipline, on independence. But we forgot that the greatest strength is knowing when to connect, when to trust, when to set aside pride for purpose." She looked down at the arena where cubs from both packs stood together. "The human did not make our cubs weak." She reminded them of something we tried to breed out, the true meaning of pack. Not just fighting together, but caring for each other. Not just following orders, but thinking and adapting. Not just suppressing emotion, but understanding it and using it. One of the officials stood. "But matriarch, if we adopt these methods, we change our entire culture. Is that wise? Is it wise to stay broken?" Keshra countered. "Look at our cubs. Truly look. The ones trained in traditional methods are effective but brittle. The ones trained in the human way are effective and resilient. Which do you want defending your worlds?" The official sat down without answering. Keshra turned to Maya. "You came here as an outsider. You challenged our most fundamental traditions. You forced us to see things we tried to ignore." She paused. "The Coalition offers you a position. You will develop training protocols for all member species. You will teach others what you have taught here." Maya felt the magnitude of that offer. Teaching one pack of Rakesh cubs was one thing. Reforming coalition-wide training was something else entirely. "I accept," she said. "But I'll need help, Torvin." The Rakesh instructor looked startled, then thoughtful. Then he nodded. "Someone needs to